Most people are basically just living with it day by day. But if you would really like to sit down and talk about the subject, specifically my upbringing and how I was raised, honestly, when I think back on my father and the kind of man he was, there's so much more to the story than I usually share. He was a university professor, a professor at the Faculty of Agriculture at Al-Azhar University, so he was an academic. And he was strict. I mean, he wasn't exactly democratic, at least not in how he raised me, because we were two boys, and I was like intensive care and critical cases and treatment, pain, and my brother was surgery, vascular surgery, and my younger brother. I don't really like to talk about you much so that no one feels persecuted, but that's how the family was. And he always encouraged us from a young age, saying that the university path is the strongest path in education and in the educational hierarchy. And when you become a professor, there's no one higher than that point. After your doctorate, no one can override your signature. I used to see him talking with people who were working on their doctorates and master's degrees, and you could sense the respect and reverence. I would see him preparing for his lectures, for example, because he really cared about his Saturday lecture. So, for example, you'd find him holding or preparing an exam, and I used to discuss with him and say, you bring me your previous exams, the ones you made, and you choose questions from the old ones. And there was no renewal, just the same as before. May God have mercy on him. And of course, he was a professor at the Faculty of Agriculture, so we would always discuss with him the nature of plants, and he really loved eating vegetables. A lot, you understand me? Raw vegetables, yes, exactly. People eat things like watercress and arugula and such, and he used to bring them, clean them in a certain way, and wash them in a certain way. So I used to be surprised and say to him, did God really create us just so we could sit and eat a bit of these greens? Wash it for 5 hours with water, vinegar, and lemon. He would tell me, so I can give it to Dan, and I told him, but it's still difficult, and he said, to get the dust and dirt out. And then, after you finish with the lettuce, you sit for a while to keep it a bit greener. So he actually developed a very specific technique for carefully preparing all the fresh vegetables, and then wrapping them up in a certain way using thick white paper, just to ensure they would stay perfectly green and crisp while stored in the fridge. So you end up taking a big bag so he can eat the lettuce and arugula for the taste. You don't know the benefits it has. He would always say that phrase to you. There started to be a contradiction with my own thinking. My mom would tell me something and he would tell me something else. So I'd wonder, who should I listen to? So ever since my childhood, there was always this debate between him and me. So we never really got along. He and I weren't very comfortable dealing with each other, but I learned discipline from him, which I didn't have before. I wasn't very disciplined at all. He really valued punctuality. I was always late for his appointments, even at work. That caused me problems. And even as a student, you'd always find me being the one who entered the exam room late, for example. But overall, in terms of my general performance evaluation, no, I was considered smart. They used to say I was smart, and I was always among the top students. For example, in the third year of preparatory school, was it their influence? My father and my mother as well, because she encouraged him. You see, my mother, she was a teacher in the Ministry of Education, so the environment was academic. They also had that inherited perspective that the family's success comes from the children's success, and that's the real fruit. So honestly, they didn't just provide an environment. They created a complete environment based on that you have to study, do well, have a goal. And my late father, may God have mercy on him, his main goal wasn't for me to just become a doctor, but to become a university professor. Not just a doctor, no. A professor at the Faculty of Medicine at Ain Shams University. Those were his exact words. So that's it. I ended up fulfilling his goal. Yes, of course, he was the driving force. I think my placement, or rather, the whole ordeal of high school, despite the fact that I scored with the advanced level, 102%, meaning I could get into anything I wanted. And yet, if I had missed my first choice, that would have been it. Everything would have stopped. It was something that really affected the family, for example. No, 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 no. He knows what I want. What does he want? He wants, that's what he wanted. And I did what he wanted, even though I wanted something else. I wanted to join the police, but he told me no. I told him I didn't want to be a doctor, but he insisted, no, you have to become a doctor. So I said, okay, it's all about the money. I mentioned it during the application process. Kareem, my father, asked me why I wanted to join the police. I don't even know. Is it about authority? No. Any child you ask will say they want to be an officer. You know, it's always either an officer or a pilot. He wants to turn out like Hassan Youssef, not like Ahmed Mazar. And as long as he wants to be outstanding, you have to pay attention, sir. Usually top students these days aren't interested in the police or military careers. You see? You brought this up. Let me tell you something, sir. You said it yourself, right? I had two friends who at one point were role models for me. We were in our second year of medical school and they were among the top students, just like me. They were getting excellent grades too. And then suddenly I found out that Ahmed was transferring to the faculty of law. And I think another friend of mine, Tantawi, was transferring to the faculty of commerce. I was like, guys, what are you doing? Commerce and law. Ahmed told me, I'll finish, get a job, and be appointed to the state council before you even graduate. And we were only in our second year. And that's exactly what happened. He finished 4 years of law, graduated top of his class all 4 years, and now he's in the state council. Now, I don't know. By now, he must be something big in law. Yeah. And Tantawi got into the faculty of commerce, and now he's running one of the banks, so I saw it happen. But I didn't have that kind of courage back then to tell him, that's it, I can't continue in medicine. I was just forced to go on, but I naturally love reading anyway. I mean, I'm really good at Arabic language and English as well. I really love them both, actually. When I was younger, I also took German for a while, and I was really into it too. Whenever I study something, I get 1, 2, even 3 reference books, and I memorize. After I finished my medical degree and started my internship, that's it. My mother, may God grant her health, found me coming to her with a reference book on rhetoric and literature. I told her, we're going to study Arabic language. The Arabic language is collapsing. And here I felt it was my responsibility to study Arabic because of this decline. When the genitive case is turned into songs and indefinites are treated as definites, it becomes a genitive, meaning the meaning is lost. The science is lost. The meaning disappears. She looked at me and said, look, I don't understand what you're saying. Are you joking? You're crazy. But no, I'm actually good at this. I love Arabic grammar, morphology, extracting rhetorical devices, literature. I really love this stuff. This is our life. Or at least I used to think that a person shouldn't be one-dimensional, knowing only one thing. It's not right to speak while knowing just one thing, from one perspective, studied in one way, from one book, from one mouthpiece. That's not how a human should be. And keep in mind, I see a human being's life as a short journey. If a person doesn't step outside the box and think from another angle, then their life is pointless. I wasn't created to be just a cog in a machine. That's not for me. No, I was created as an individual and will be judged as an individual. So my story is unique. Where is my story then? Where is my story in the bigger picture? If I just turn out the way my father told me, he used to peel vegetables, for example, and throw away the peels, I'd ask him, so where's the benefit? Is it in what you threw away or what you're going to eat? I don't know, with zucchini, is the benefit in the part you threw away or the part you'll eat, or is there no benefit at all? And you're trying to convince me that garlic, which burns my stomach, causes bloating and gives me bad breath, is actually good for me. How can it be beneficial at the same time? These are simple questions, and their answers could be simple if I had certain knowledge in front of me, if I had something real. But I always hear, they say, or studies say. Who does these studies? How do they do them? For example, the study about garlic clearing arteries. How did they do it? Did they just eat garlic, or did they add it to molokia, or put it in medicine, or in a capsule? How did they do it? What was the dosage? Did they check the arteries and see them clear up? Do you even know the cause of arteriosclerosis? Stop me at a certain point, people. I used to always say, if I don't know how this watch works, I won't wear it, by the way. I need to have some basics. What if tomorrow this whole world breaks down like so many industries have collapsed and disappeared with the death of their craftsmen? For example, the craft of Damascus steel. Why did it disappear? Because the craftsmen died out. That's it, end of story. The steel donkeys used to come and take them away and hide them. The secret of mummification disappeared. Why? Because its practitioners died out. So that means you have to stop at the knowledge that reaches you and think. You have to stop at the orders you receive and think. I consider myself today, I'm 46 years old. When I think about it, I realize that when I rebelled as a child, it was natural. And when my son rebels against me today, it's natural that he will rebel against me. And when does God address a person? That's why they say God has given an excuse to a man who reaches 60. Why? He went through all the stages. At one point, he rebelled against his family and stepped outside the framework of his society. But then he responded again, and it was for the worse, a response to his own whims, not to any real reference point. He came down to earth for it. For example, Abraham's rebellion against his father happened at what age? Puberty, 13, 14. What are these idols? What are these statues? A question just out of astonishment. Why this devotion to these idols? Why am I so devoted to these studies? Why am I forced? Why do we have to eat zucchini every day, for example, just because it has zinc? How do I become aware? Or later, when you used to tell people at first, therapeutic nutrition, they'd say, what are you going to treat me with, sir? The treatment, I mean, as soon as they hear therapeutic nutrition, they think you're going to feed them something and treat them. What is it? They think food is a cure, like feed him. Isn't that what they say? Eat it. Isn't that it? Is that the tradition? No, that's not the tradition. I'm a bit rebellious and there's a different vibe to it. Why didn't you stop? Isn't there a station in our lives too, a skill where you stop and reflect on the idea? I never did. I never said that the system is just words and that's it. If you really understand the word system, it's not a specific regimen. It's a real lifestyle. So when it comes to obligations, whether they're based on the Quran, the Sunnah, or something similar, I have never said that at all, not even once. On the contrary, I approach the matter scientifically. But when I found that it aligns with religion, I have to admit it and submit. That's it. I spent 7 years following the scientific path, and then I connected with Sad City. I would ask him how stomach acid is important and how I can stop it with medication, and he wouldn't know how to answer, so I would close that door and start searching again. How does blood sugar rise at all levels in all these critical cases, and yet the patient is alive and benefiting? But as soon as I lower the blood sugar and a problem occurs, he can't answer. So I would close that chapter and move on. I created new chapters, completely new ideas compared to what I had studied before. So I started putting the books side by side and looking at them. These are just agreements, guys. What is this? It's an agreement. We agreed on this, but it's not the truth. No one knows the cause of diabetes, and they tell you it's unknown. Diabetes is unknown, hypertension is unknown, epilepsy is unknown, tumors are unknown. There are hardly any diseases with a known cause except for a very few. For example, let me tell you, but keep in mind, I'm also explaining that among these few, some are just symptoms, not diseases. So, for instance, I might say there's someone who has a deficiency of an enzyme called G6PD in his body. So the red blood cells break down when he eats fava beans, and we call it fava bean anemia. So I know how to describe it correctly, right? This enzyme, as we said, is deficient, so we can consider this a disease. Fine, I agree. But then they ask, how do you prevent it? Just don't eat fava beans. Makes sense? So prevention is the cure. Prevention is the cure. Prevention is the cure. It's not about taking something to get better. People always say, my back hurts, what should I take for it? No, it's not about what you take, it's about what you stop. Think about what you took that caused your back pain, what you took that upset your colon, what you took that made your memory foggy, what you took that made your skin inflamed, what you took that gave you a headache. That's it, that's the point.